we can just follow the table. Trevor Stores, I'm the president and CEO of the Alaska Children's Trust. We were the primary funder and one of the key masterminds behind creating the ACE Fund. I was with Jessica, co-chaired the IT team that initially, which you'll learn more about, to help get this set up. And I'm just thrilled to see the dream really coming alive, one of the board, but especially with the board seeing so much lived experience at the table to really have the conversation around early childhood and childcare for our current and future children. So this really just touches me. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Khalil Withan. Nice to meet many of you. And my day job is I'm an attorney. I'm the general counsel for a labor union, the Alaska District Council of Labor. So we represent around 5,000 employees across the state, from pipeline work to public sector to healthcare. And so I do contract enforcement and negotiations. And then I also, here as a parent, 2 kids, one in ASD and aftercare, and then another in a daycare.
Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Hines. I was off camera, so I'll scoot over here. I'm the municipal clerk, and I was just going to do part of your training. And I'll swear you in when you're all done introducing yourself.
I am Jessica Nessett. I am the director of early learning for the Anchorage School District. I started off as babysitter nanny all the way through 3rd grade. I've been a principal in the Anchorage School District for 3 years, and now director of early learning. And I also have a toddler.
Hi, Marie Husa. I work at the mayor's office, and I currently manage boards and commissions, hence my involvement here. And like Trevor said, I've been in the municipality for 17 years, and so I've seen boards and commission, and I've staffed some of them, been a member as well. But seeing this one, from an idea to now you're meeting here, hiring an executive director, it's so neat to see. It's like a great model to use on how government works and how you start an idea and to actually do it. So I'm excited about that. My kids are grown, but I remember the headaches of childcare and finding good ones and paying them well. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm Nolan Clouda. I'm the policy director in the mayor's office. And so my responsibilities are for our policy with regard to energy, economic development, fiscal policy, housing, and also government affairs. And so so that the child care piece of this kind of falls under my economic development part of my responsibilities. And before this, I was the director of the Center for Economic Development at UAA for 10 years and became really aware of childcare as an important economic issue. But I also became a father in 2019. And so I have 2 little ones who are both in the childcare system now. And I've had to deal with navigating that, which I think is probably something that's very familiar to everyone here. When Jessica had the kid sounds coming in the back of the background, I relate to that very acutely. I've had so many meetings with yelling in the background and joyful kid cheers, so I can fully relate to it. But this is something I'm really excited to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good reminder maybe to bring up that, you know, if people are having, if you're with your kids, like I know Georgina's home today because her kids are sick, if that is fine, like we are welcoming space, we understand challenges with childcare. I had even suggested, like, if we ever have an evening meeting, you know, because that'll be up to you guys and you need childcare, we can try to make that happen. So just we want to model the kind of behavior that we want to see out in the world. So yeah, do whatever you need to do for your families as you're part of this board. Okay, I think that Jamie is going to swear you all in. Jamie, I'm not sure how we do that with the remote folks, but maybe you'll guide us through it. Maybe they'll just raise their hands.
Yes, so I am going to pass out 2 copies of the oaths here in person. And Austin, if you will email me the email addresses of the board members who are online, I'll email them through DocuSign.
Sure.
And then they can sign it later. And so who I just handed you 2, you're just gonna sign it and date both copies, and then I'll do the rest of it. It's just that at the end of the meeting, I'll hand you back your official copy and I'll keep a copy for my records. And so if all the board members online want to unmute yourselves and everybody raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly
solemnly
swear
solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
I'll support
I will
the
support and defend the
Constitution
Constitution
of
of
the
the
United
United States,
Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
Constitution
the Constitution of the State of
State
Alaska,
of Alaska,
and the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
and the
the
Charter
Charter
of
of the Municipality
Charter
of
of the
Anchorage,
Municipality of Anchorage,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
perform the duties
of the Anchorage Child Care and Early Education Fund Board
of the
of
Anchorage
the
Child
Anchorage
Care
Child Care
the Anchorage
Education
Child Care
Fund
Fund Board
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my
to the best of my
best of
ability.
my ability.
Perfect.
I think I just found out how we could raise $10,000. This is going to funniest home video. Right, that whole process. Right up there with like row, you vote. Wow.
Kind of felt like a kindergarten
good.
classroom or something.
Yeah, or it's like a grade 2 singing class, you know, everybody's off. Thank you very much for that good laugh. I like a good belly laugh. Now I know why you're recording that. This is on TikTok. I know where it's coming from.
Well, it happens to also be on Halloween, which is why I'm not really wearing, normal clerk clothes. I have my baseball earrings on.
Okay.
It will be
My
on.
kids are 17 and 13, and I dealt with childcare in Haynes. And
Oh, my gosh. Can't
Oh, boy.
imagine.
My costume's at the office. I was like, oh, first board meeting, people are meeting me.
These do go on YouTube, by the way, on the Muni's YouTube channel.
Yeah,
All the
yeah.
board and commission meetings. So
Yeah,
it will be,
right.
so it will be in the public record.
Yeah, when I run for office, I can't wait for this stuff. to
Yes,
show.
there we go. We'll make sure.
All fun. Great. Back to you, Austin.
Okay. Great. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Awesome. And if I'm looking over here, it's because your faces are over there and then I can sort of engage with you while I'm doing this. I'm going to try, there's a lot of material that we wanted to run through just so you all have the background of what's been happening over the last year or so. But I'll try to do it quickly to leave plenty of time for conversation. And then also want to acknowledge that Branwen, Jessica, and Trevor all served on the implementation team, which I'll talk about here soon. And Trevor were the co-chairs and have all three of them have not only the IT experience, but a lot of practical experience in the sector. So you guys should jump in at any point, and also anybody should jump in with questions. It's meant to be casual. We're all here learning together. So my name is Austin. I already introduced myself. That is my little guy, Wilder. That was last summer, I think. So he is now 2.5 almost. And just incredibly cute, but of course, what else would I think? Okay, and now my slide doesn't want to advance. I'll do this. Interesting. Oh, just wanted to say a big thank you. We know that you're all volunteers and stepping away from whatever you're otherwise up to today, whether it's taking care of kids who are sick at home for Georgina, or Branwen, who's running a center and has to step away from that to be here. So thank you so much for your commitment to this work. I just wanted to run through what we're going to do today. So most of you are pretty familiar, if not experts in the sector, but I wanted to run through just some basic facts around what's happening in the childcare and early education sector and why this fund is so important, and then talk about how the fund came to be, various resources, what the board's role is, and what we've done over the past year, including the implementation team. And then also want to talk a little bit about the ACE Fund 2025 budget process and other important tasks for you all ahead and what will come next. And then toward the end of the meeting, we're going to hear from Jamie. We're going to hear from Quincy, who popped in earlier this morning but stepped out for a little bit around some potential conflicts issues. And then the mayor's office, Marie and is going to talk through boards and commission sort of general procedures. So some basic facts about the sector. Since 2019, the number of licensed childcare programs in Alaska has dropped by 20%. And for the first time in 20 years, there are fewer than 200 licensed programs in Anchorage. So, you know, we saw a lot of these challenges highlighted in COVID, but they have not just bounced back. We are seeing a constant drop. In fact, one of the members of our implementation team, the other provider member, was considering closing, and I actually don't know if they did in the end. But even with all the resources and experience with this group, still challenges operating these businesses. 51% of Alaskan families can't fully participate in the labor force due to cost, availability, or quality of childcare. So we're talking about, you know, over half of families are having to really make adjustments to their jobs. So whether they're working full time, I mean, people have quit jobs. You all know this, but it's a major challenge for families in Alaska and across the country. Benefits of available care, and I know Kevin and Nolan could speak better to this than I can as economists who have both worked in and talked about childcare and the workforce and economic impacts. It's really good for families to have available care. If both parents choose to work outside the household, they can earn over $40,000 more annually on average if they have adequate childcare. So there is that opportunity for people who have care. And it supports working families. I know that's something that Khalil and many others here care a lot about, and especially working women. Nolan, I'm trying to remember if I might have pulled this from something a presentation you did last year, but I think it's really interesting that labor force participation is pretty equal among women and men before people have children. And then after they have children, you know, assuming that, well, after they have children, men are a lot more likely to work and women are a lot more likely to drop. And so that's just an interesting thing to be thinking about. I think a lot of us who are moms understand that there's a lot of pressure on women to manage families, and you can see that playing out in the data. So if care is so good for families and the economy, why isn't there more of it? Why isn't it easier to come by? And it really comes down to just a flawed model in the United States. And here's a graphic that shows how much governments across the world spend on childcare for toddler-aged kids. And you'll see a lot of other Western countries spend a lot of money per year to ensure that kids have adequate childcare, early education, and the United States spends hardly anything. The interesting thing is once kids get into kindergarten and then up through 12th grade, we acknowledge as a country that there needs to be a public investment. So somewhere, you know, depending on the state, $16,000 to $21,000, Alaska's the highest cost one, by the way, but is spent annually per kid in a mix of local, state, and federal taxes. But when we talk about under 5, it's just pretty much non-existent. And really what happens is that's created this, this problem that is a high cost to parents because, you know, centers are left to completely pay, to completely come up with the money from parent tuition to operate their centers or in home. And then providers are still paid a really low amount. So they're just operating on incredibly thin margins. These are just some stats about how high the cost is. Many of you know, having kids of yourself, of your own. And licensed care represents 15% of a parent's annual income. But if you're a single parent, for single male, it jumps up to 20%, 35% for single female. And of course, that's because women tend to make less money than men for doing the same jobs. And then on the other side of the coin, you know, at the same time, parents are spending so much money, providers are earning so little. This graphic on the left is a national graphic from the Washington Post, and you can see just a little under $14 an hour on average. And then on the right, this is something that, you know, I'm trying to think, Kevin, so Kevin's wife is Katie Berry, who is an economist also and an expert in childcare and early education, and she might have even done some of this work, I can't remember, but you know, showing the average monthly income for those in the sector, working in the sector. And you can see, right, it's below gas station attendant, general retail. So it's just not, we are not set up to have these businesses succeed and to have the workers be treated well and paid well and to have the parents have an affordable way to care for their families. These are just some facts. Average provider in Alaska makes under $30,000 a year. It's not a living wage. And if you're a family who has someone working in the childcare sector, you're twice as likely to live in poverty. So it's a pretty serious situation and pretty sad. The good news is we're here to try to do something about that. And I want to talk to you about Proposition 14 and how it came to be. Really, it came to be by Trevor and Eric Croft. It was an idea Eric had, and then I think he went to Trevor and said, hey, let's do this. And Trevor gathered some other folks and said, we can do it. And I was on the assembly at that time, or a lot of discussions about the ins and outs of how to do it. And in April 2023, it passed by 12-point margin, which is pretty impressive in Anchorage. I think it's a big message from the community that they care about children and care about early education. And I'm sure you guys know an investment, $1 investment in early education ends up to a $7 savings in government costs later. And that's because of lower correction costs, lower healthcare costs, because having kids educated from the beginning and treated well and respected and learning allows them to be productive members of society. So what Prop 14 did, passed in April 2023, is dedicated all of the marijuana tax for the municipality. The tax already existed, but it just dedicated all of that tax specifically to childcare and early education. And it established an ACE fund board to fund, and that is you guys. And ultimately, the decisions around how the money is spent are made by the mayor and the assembly, just like any other part of the municipal budget. But the board plays an important role each year in determining what it thinks should the money should be spent on, and puts forward a draft budget or proposed budget to the mayor and assembly. That happens in early September. This year you weren't on yet, so the implementation team put forward its proposed budget, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Any questions so far? Anything any IT or other member wanted to add? Okay. The funds started being dedicated as of January 1st of this year, so there is money sitting in the fund right now. And earlier on, we thought it'd be about $4.5 million a year. Treasury right now, the Municipal Treasury Department is estimating next year the revenue will be about 5.9 million. So there's a range. It just depends on how much marijuana people use. And if Eric Croft were here, he would make a funny joke about being from Spenard and having faith in the people of Anchorage. This is my little guy Wilder on the right again. It's nice to have a little kid that you can use for your presentation. But I just pulled this from the proposition. So this is the language and what we can use the money from the ACE fund for. I think, Trevor, again, jump in at any point if you want. I know you were a big part of drafting this, but pretty general, meant to, create access to programs. I added 0 to 12. That's generally in the sector where we think of where childcare and early education cover. Fund reading programs, to address the workforce issues, fund livable wages and training and staffing. And there was a particular emphasis in the proposition on working with the school district. And Jesse and Trevor and I have had the opportunity to talk together about possible projects and things we could do. And the municipality already, even outside of the ACE fund, collaborates with ASD on funding additional. There's, I think, 8, Jesse, is that correct? Additional Title I early education classrooms per year through the alcohol tax.
Yes, there are 8.
Okay, so that's what Prop 14 did. That's what happened. So now what do we do next? The folks who worked really hard to get that passed, Trevor at the lead of that, but others included, really wanted to ensure that the ACE fund was informed by best practices and mostly that it was implemented strategically. $5 million sounds like a lot of money, but in a huge sector that is really underfunded, it's not. And so it's particularly important to be strategic with the dollars that we have. Trevor worked with the municipality to form an implementation team that you've heard us mention last fall and hired me as a contractor to help guide them through the implementation process. The IT was made up of municipal reps. So we had 2 assembly members, Anna Brawley and Kevin Cross was initially on it, but he left the assembly. Cameron Perez-Verdia also on it. We had Carl Jacobs from the school board, a number of subject matter experts like Trevor and like Melinda Myers from Thread. We invited someone from JBear who runs the programs there, and she was a great addition. Kathleen McCardle, President and CEO of Anchorage Chamber, joined us because we know this is a huge economic and workforce issue. We had provider members like Branwen and parents like Jessica, and we had Trevor and Eric on the team who had brought forward Prop 14 to begin with. So we met monthly for almost a year. We talked about trends around the country, best practices in the sector. We had a number of presentations from experts. If you don't already know, you'll learn that Juneau has done a similar program to what we're doing. They have $2.3 million a year that they use on childcare and early education programs there. They're doing some really cool things. We talked with, Jesse. We had Cook Inlet Tribal Council come and talk with us about their upcoming funding and programs. And we ultimately, the implementation team made recommendations to you and to the Assembly and Mayor in our final report and proposed budget. Just wanted to run through some of the work of the IT over the past year. I produced a white paper that analyzed trends and what's going on around the country and different states who are leaders and individual, cities or other jurisdictions and what they're doing around childcare and early education. It was really important for us to get feedback from the public. So I spoke at and led over a dozen community conversations. We were everywhere in Anchorage. We went down to Girdwood, we went to Eagle River, we did in person, we did Zoom, we did daytime, we did nighttime. We tried to make it, we had childcare and food provided. We tried to get as many people to those conversations as we could to really hear from people about their lived experience and what they were really seeing on the ground. We did a survey to collect information from people about what their top priorities were and how they thought that we should use the ACE fund, and we got over 400 responses. We did a ton of other meetings with, state representatives, Heidi Hedberg, who is the Commissioner of Health, a lot of members of the public, many people in the sector. I met with school age, specifically school age, went down to Girdwood and met with Little Bears, met with all kinds of people. And we did a ton of outreach. We ran radio ads for all of our in-person meetings to try to get more and more people there. We did a ton of social media, and big thanks to Trevor. Alaska Children's Trust donated their time. The communications director there and I worked together to get, and with the assembly staff, to get a ton of things out on social media. We together, collectively, implementation team and me, implementation team signed them all, but we worked on, a number of different op-eds throughout that year. Trevor and I and Jessica and Kathleen have done podcasts. We put flyers all around town, diaper pantries, schools, churches, trying to get people to our events and to understand and what we were working on, and really trying to target places that might not otherwise have heard about this, and bring in a big circle of people into our work. And we've had thousands of visits to the ACE Fund website, which is careforkidsanchorage.com. You guys can check it there. Your names are all on it. I put you on there. And we'll figure out long-term how to navigate, how this implementation thing all started is that Trevor just ponied up some money and said, we're going to have to do this. This is what makes sense to make sure it's grounded in all of this work, and we take into account the public feedback, and it's strategic. And so Alaska Children's Trust, big props to them. They came up with all of this. And so the website is operated through them. It's a separate site, but we'll have to eventually navigate it to the municipality. But a lot of the work was done by ACT as we were getting this all going. And we also, in the spring, worked with the assembly members, Anna and Cameron, to bring forward the ordinance that laid out the duties and responsibilities and composition of the board, which is you guys. We did a bunch of other stuff. We, went through a strategic visioning process. What were our goals, guiding principles? What do we think are the top priorities in this field? course, we settled on working around access, quality, and accessibility, which are that's a framework that a lot of people use in this sector, and really started focusing on access. And I'm sure that a lot of you have not had a chance to read the final report yet, but I hope that you will. It's a really good summary of what's happened over the past year and includes a narrative of all of our recommendations. I think I tried not to make it too long. I think it's only like 12 or 14 pages, so worth reading. And it includes a bunch of appendices, and the first one is the proposed budget that the implementation team put together. And we submitted that report and budget to the mayor and assembly in early September before you all arrived. So that's what we did. That brings us to sort of now, which is the mayor's office took that budget that we submitted in early September and thought about it and thought about their goals and what they wanted to put in the budget. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And as I mentioned earlier, in a typical year, you all will put that budget together. And we'll talk a bit about how you would do that. You're a volunteer board, but you are allowed to hire staff and contractors as needed, including an executive director for your board who will staff you and help you do all of these things. And so that's something we'll talk about. But don't go, oh no, how am I going to do all this? I'm a volunteer. And right now, the mayor put together her budget with her team, and the assembly is now evaluating it. They've been holding work sessions on the budget, the big budget, right? The whole municipal budget, but including for the ACE fund. And the assembly is expected to pass the final budget on November 19th. So as of that date, hopefully we should know sort of what the ACE fund programs will be. So I just want to talk quickly about what was in the budget that the IT put forward. There were 7 major categories. The first one is one that we're the most excited about. It's early educator childcare subsidies. And actually, maybe I'll just run through these and then I'll just run through them quickly and then I'll talk a little bit more about them. Operational, Nolan, I should have changed that to not to grants. We're calling it operational assistance, which is better for the muni. Pilot projects, some capital assistance, in-home facility startup funds, and then of course, there can be up to 10% of the fund annually can be used on administration. So that could be an executive director, contractors or staff you need, doing the required audit. There's a couple things the board will need to do annually, and so you'll have funds to do that, which is great. And then tax collection also costs about 5% per year of the fund the municipality spends on going out and collecting. So I just want to run through what we put together just kind of briefly with a little more info. But so the first of those 7 was early educator childcare subsidies. The implementation team was really, really excited about these. The idea is that this money would be used to pay for childcare and early education workers' kids' childcare. And what we've seen, and Brandon could probably tell us all about this out in the real world, is that, someone might be working in childcare, you're not making a ton of money and you have a kid. And imagine if you make under $30,000 a year, but you have a child who now is going to need to go to daycare if you continue working. How on earth can you justify, and if you have more than one kid, right? No way. How can you justify continuing to work at a low wage if you have to pay that? And so Kentucky, the state of Kentucky came up with this cool program in 2022 that said, why don't we, there's a state assistance for people who are of a certain income and below for childcare. Why don't we just fold in anybody who's a provider and who provides childcare services full-time or 20 hours or more a week into that assistance program and have providers get free childcare for their own, paid for childcare for their own children. You can scale it in different ways, right? If people have multiple children, do you pay all of it? Do you pay part of it? There's a lot of things to figure out, but the cool thing about this program is what happens is that someone, if they choose to send their kid to childcare, they can stay working. Their care is paid for, and particularly since they have a low income, that is a major benefit to those workers. And it's a major benefit to the community because what happens is that since that person's still working, now they can care for other people's kids at that center and home facility. So it's a huge benefit sort of on multiple fronts, and we were excited to do that. We could talk more about this later. I don't want to suck up all of our time, but a lot of these programs, the challenge is figuring out the implementation of them and how do they play out. You know, if only 10% of the estimated amount of educators in Anchorage use the benefit, we'd have about $12,000 a year per educator. If 40% use the benefit, we only have $3,000 a year. We don't think it'll be that high. It's pretty high on JBEAR, but we think for demographic reasons that's a little different than maybe what the average would be in Anchorage. And a lot of these folks might be eligible for state assistance as well. So what we're hoping to do is to cover that gap. Whatever state assistance isn't paying for, we could cover that back or that gap and make those workers have that fully funded. Anything else that IT members want to share about that one? Okay. Operational assistance would be meant to cover, for any childcare operation, childcare early education operation in Anchorage, and meant to cover general operating expenses to be determined based on how the entity wants to spend it. Ultimately, as I described earlier, the sector is just so resource poor that we want people who are running their own businesses to decide how they want to spend that. And we know that people need funding. We know that. And so this also a lot of details to work out an implementation on, how do you scale it? If you have a really big operation, you probably would get more funding. If you're an in-home program with only 4 kids, for instance, you might get less. And then, so this is what we were recommending using for 2025 funding, basically doing these 2 large programs. And then once you add administration and tax collection, you'd be close to the amount we would have for that year. This year, we're in sort of a unique situation, which is that we have money left over from 2024 because it's been accruing throughout this year while we've been working on implementation. And so we thought, well, what cool things could we do with this funding that we might not be able to do every year? And not implying that the 2025 we have to do every year either. I mean, this is the first year. And as Trevor has said multiple times, we're testing things out, right? We're seeing what works, and it's up to the board ultimately to decide what you want to do long term, and to the mayor and assembly, of course, they'll really be the deciders. But we thought of 3 programs we could do with 2024 funds. One was pilot projects. Like if there are really cool programs or aspects of programs or new projects starting that could say, yeah, I can get there if I have this funding, and here's the innovative thing that I want to do, perhaps the board could help get that funding to them to get them moving. So that one has the least sort of like prescriptive, like here's how it's going to work, because it's really, I see that more as the board starting to brainstorm how that would work. And Nolan and I have been working a lot with Anchorage Health Department to talk about implementation of all of these programs and how that would work. Capital assistance, we hear from a lot of early child care operations that they can't afford playground equipment, they can't afford, a new roof, all of the things that it takes to run a business because we're operating on such a thin margin. And then facility startup funds, some folks on IT were really interested in this because it seems like the quickest, easiest way to increase the number of care providers. If someone could get a little bit of startup funding and be able to open a new in-home facility and care for a few more kids, that is a lot easier than starting a big center, right? So we thought that could be effective. We also acknowledge this is a lot of programs, right? And we've been talking with the mayor's office about how do you implement all of these and how do you implement them all at the same time? And with no new staff yet, I'm here till December, but that's how long my contract is. Like, how do we figure out how to do this and get money out on the street to businesses that need it to survive? Anything anybody else wants to add on that before we move on to the Okay. So that's the budget that the IT put together and put forward to the mayor and to the assembly. And the mayor's budget was all of those plus some other things. So maybe Nolan, you could jump in and talk about the things that you added and that there might be an S version and what that is.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Austin. So the budget that the mayor's proposed budget that we released a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of October included funding for, we actually put all 5 of these programs in there. So the 2 that are recommended as recurring ongoing ones, the subsidies for childcare workers and the operational assistance ones are and as well as the pilot projects, capital funds, and then in-home facility startup funds. So and then in addition to that, 3 other programs that are related to early childhood that had previously been funded under the alcohol tax budget. The charter language for ACE, is the funding has to go toward early education or childcare related costs, and so those programs fit that description. So one is an Accluton after school program, an early literacy program, and then the Best Beginnings program. And I can say a little bit more about those efforts, but the total amount going to those in our proposed budget was pretty small. It was definitely mainly focused on the IT recommendations. What we're a little bit daunted by is we kind of taken a breath and as we've had conversations internally about administering this many programs and also acknowledging kind of frankly that in the recent past, I think the municipalities had a tough time always being able to get grants out the door in a timely way. And so we did recognize that we might be positioned for success if we don't try to stand up all 5 of these programs initially. So the way we're thinking about it is that we're going to prioritize the top 2 recommendations for early educator childcare subsidies and operational funding. I think are what we would prioritize, and then of the other 3 programs, I think we like the idea. I mean, and this is something that I would definitely be interested in. That we'd really value the input of this group, but we feel like the pilot project funding is something that might be a really good opportunity for us to learn what the sector needs and what they're onto and what kinds of ideas we have out there that could get funded that we're not necessarily thinking of right now. So we like that one a lot. But of the capital funding or the startup funds, they have arguments for them. So that's something we would welcome. We are also at the same time as we do in this S version, and that's by the way substitute version. So it's an updated version of the budget essentially that what we propose, and it's very standard that the mayor has a proposed budget, and then there's some tweaks that come in the weeks afterwards. So that's a very common practice. We're also probably doing the same thing with the alcohol tax budget, and so between the 2, we're making sure that we're doing the right things in those budgets that we're able to respond to. So I'd also add there's a little bit of this budget also included a different revenue number for 2024 for the marijuana revenue, and Treasury has an updated one, so that's another thing that has to be tweaked a little bit too. But I'd be very interested in any feedback that you guys have about prioritization of these programs and what you think is most important to stand up.
I guess if we're allowed to ask questions, I have 2 quick ones.
Yeah.
First, is revenue higher or lower than expected?
Actually, a little bit for 2025, the revenue is expected to be 5.9 million. That's the Treasury's estimate for it. They base it on, and they do a pretty good job with this stuff, and they base it on the number of that a couple of marijuana shops have opened, and so there's an additional amount of revenue associated with that. But for 2024, the revenue forecast moved around a little bit. So it was at one point it was 5.7, then it became 5.2, and then the 5.2 is a little bit low, but it's somewhere in between those.
Then the other one too is, can you talk a little bit about the difference between the pilot projects, capital grants, and in-home facility startup grants? Because I could also see an argument where those second 2 programs kind of fit within the strategic nature of pilot projects. Right? If somebody's coming in with a small capital project, I could see them trying to fit it in both programs, for instance.
Yeah, and I think Austin and probably Trevor and anyone else and a couple there are others that were involved in the IT, but I think folks involved in the IT conversation would probably be more prepared to speak to that. But what you're saying though about the other intents being able to be folded into the pilot projects is something that's consistent with how we've been thinking about it as well.
This is Trevor. I can speak a little bit to it. Also, as a nonprofit, you were always trying to find a way to fit in. So yeah, people could write it. I think it will come down to when we designed the RFP and put it out, that you put parameters of what you would fund, how do we classify innovative, what capital, what does that mean? Like, will you fund anything or is it focused? So one of the things that the IT did was didn't try to prescribe everything. One, didn't have the time, but two, also wanted to recognize what the role of the board could be and knowing that we could get the board up, get these things going and start bringing some of that together and recognizing that really year one is the litmus test for everything. And you'll learn when you put it out, because you'll think that you have it all covered in the boundaries. And then someone submits and it's like, oh, never thought it from that angle. And then you update the RFP. And I don't know if it's for this or later conversation and a little bit, one of the things that I wanted to share from the IT perspective is there's bigger picture things. When we were looking at all of this, one of them was always using an equity lens. We were really going, how do we make sure that this is equitable? And one of the ways of making it equitable is making sure that it's open to all. When I see a Klutner listed best beginnings, my first question is, how did they get in there? Did they come and meet with the mayor? Did they do a sales pitch? If that's the case, or was staff, was that offered to everybody? Like, how do we make sure that when we do these dollars, they're equitable? And there was a lot of work that was done around the alcohol tax. There was a whole document around that and so forth, because many of our smaller companies, some of the folks that maybe are in working with the low income families, things like, they don't have the time. One, they don't know the mayor. They don't know how to meet the mayor, and they don't know that process, and let alone have the time to do it. There's some inequities in that process. So one of the things, and I say this out loud for us as a board, but also for those in the mayor's office, us to really have this conversation and making sure, because if we want everybody to lobby the mayor, I will personally get everybody at the door. And I don't think that's what's wanted.
No.
But that's somewhat even how the legislature works. So we really want to be thinking, how do we make this equitable? The second thing is, and it'll be interesting from the economist standpoint and so forth, is when we're thinking about this $5 million, one of the things we were always thinking about is actually making impact. So one of the things that we looked at was like, oh, why don't we just put all $5 million and up the salaries? And we used a basic salary, I think it was $15. It would allow us, with the number of employees that we could project, thanks to the muni, they gave us at least, there's about 1,700 individuals. It was $1.76, I think it was. Don't quote me, but it was within that range.
Even less. I think it was 127.
Even less. So looking at that, we're like, yeah, like personally, like $1.27, outside people are like, oh, that's great. But when you're going from poor to poor, it doesn't do anything. And our ultimate goal is, for the first couple of years, because it's only $5 million, is how do you stabilize this industry? Because the stats that Austin shared at the very beginning are very stark. How do we stop things from closing? How do we incentivize this? We knew that just giving $1 something to people wasn't going to stabilize. In a sense, it was throwing money away. It wasn't actually going to do something. So we really sat there and were like, okay, how do we stabilize? So one, that was the larger pot of like, give grants directly to the providers. And with them determining, that was the nicest thing to have, like Jessica and beyond at the table. People that are doing this stuff, they're like, don't make us jump through hoops. This isn't $1 million. The grants may be 5,000, 10,000. Don't make us spend all this administrative time. And every program needs something different. So don't control it, trust. And again, recognizing this, nobody is making huge money, some not much at all, of this industry. So really trusting the industry. And then we came up with the stipends for we're calling it provider stipends, was was the only thing that we could think of to create some level of stabilization for staff, because that was the number one thing that came across the board from providers, from the community, and from the businesses. This is what we need. And trying to figure out how do we meet that need within. So a lot of attention was put to that. And that bigger picture was, how do we stabilize? Because again, it's only 5 million. And if we really be honest, innovative grants are great. We could take 5 million, give everybody $1 million for innovation. Everybody in the nation is dealing with this. Just so you know, we've done a lot of research. There's nothing innovative. Early childhood is early childhood. I use the word, it's pretty standard, doesn't make it easy work, but we know what it is. And there isn't some big program out there that if you do this, there's some cost savings. Like, you can't do this virtually. There are set costs with licensing and so forth. There's nothing innovative, and there is no big secret pot of money out there, just so you know. There's no money tree. I planted $1. I'm hoping it grows, but in the 20 years I planted it, it hasn't popped up. Probably a squirrel already got it and used it for their nest. So thinking of that, again, we're like, okay, because really, how does our public education work? Where does that $21,000 come from? It comes from a collective of funds, and then it's community. And until we as a community, as a nation and a state realize that, we're always going to be chasing. And I think everybody that's providing it, these services, I'm seeing heads nod. It's like, yeah. So going innovative is great. You give some money. All right, that's for a year. What are they going to do next year? It's always that question, are you going to be sustainable? Well, I'm going to ask for more money.
Right.
That's all you can do. So one of the things I'm hoping with this board is that we really be not innovative, but realistic and force some of the discussions. And some of that will be around data and things like that. And that's how we came up with this initial plan, and really thinking that way, because we don't want to harm and we don't want to set anybody up for failure. Here's $1 million, great. Next year, you're not getting it. And then they close or they struggle, and it's actually more detrimental to the system than if we would have just done something like small grants. So those are some of the conversations we had. I'm sure we're going to have as well, and just to set that set up that conversation.
Yeah, and I think those are great points, Trevor. And I think that the early educator childcare subsidies, I would classify that as innovative, only because, you know, some places have done it, but not everywhere. But I think Trevor's point is right on, which is like, this is an underfunded sector. And so you can't keep asking people to save money, right? Or, oh, can't you make some cuts on this? Or couldn't you be more efficient about how you pay? No, there's no money and they're struggling. And so I think just like, that's such a good baseline to start with. And that's why I included those background facts, is like, this is an underfunded sector. It is underfunded by society, and we can't fix everything unless society jumps in and says we value this enough to pay for it. But we're doing what we can until that happens.
It will be about having those real conversations. I think of, because your next week, in conversation with Thread, they don't go now to the legislature, because we work really close with you all, and go, hey, can we just get 5 million for childcare? No, it's 30 million. This is what it's cost. We don't get it, but we're not hiding the real cost. Like, that's part of what we're going to have to figure out. What is the system that we want? What's it going to cost? How do we use what money we do have towards it? And then the question is how do we support our community in getting more? How do we make that 5 million? In 3 years, we can up the marijuana tax, just so you know. Oh, I'm watching that clock, because the marijuana, there's a whole nother story. I'm being recorded. But we need to be looking at that. But we're also, there's Project Anchorage. Well, great. Building a building is great, but if we don't have staff of people to fill it, how do we also invest in our community, our human resource as well? There's things that we can be doing as a board that I'm hoping that we do. Anchorage School District, they've got open classrooms. They're talking about closures. People don't want their communities. Well, how do we now take it? I know, Jessica, you worked on, there's a potential plan. Like, how do we be innovative about using what we have more effectively and actually getting rid of maybe some of the bureaucracy that prevents us from
Right.
doing this. And that's going to be, I'm hoping, is the role of our board, not just going who gets what money, but actually leading the conversation that we need in our community and drumming that, beating that drum that we need. So thank you for the opportunity to stand on my soapbox a bit.
Great. And okay, Mildred's stepping away for a minute, no problem. Yeah, there's a lot of documents too that we want to share with the board that came from the implementation team. Implementation team came up with a goals and guiding principles document and factors to keep in mind when awarding funds. And so there's a lot of stuff out there. It's just a lot for the first meeting. So we're going through the background, but as you meet regularly, I think we'll start talking through those things, start talking through how to implement, start talking through your next steps. And that's a good segue to, well, I'll quickly share. So if you guys have feedback about the budget, you could share it now, you could share it later, you can think through what your thoughts are. I know that the mayor's office wants to hear it. Where we are in the budget process is that in a week or two, I think it's like November 9th or 8th or something. Nolan, correct me if I'm wrong. The assembly will propose any amendments they want to the budget. And again, we're talking the big budget, right? The whole municipal budget, but including the ACE fund budget. And they'll be taking public comment at their meetings, and then they plan to pass the budget on November 19th. The mayor then can do line item vetoes. Hopefully there won't be many. There were a lot of vetoes in past years, and then the assembly just overriding it. So we'll see how that goes. I think it'll be a little different dynamic this year. So we started with the budget just because the budget is what's happening right now, and we know there's a lot of pressure to get. Can you guys hear me? I see my video.
Yes,
You're good.
Okay,
You're
great.
good.
And I can always turn my video off. Maybe I will for a second. Give it.
You're okay. All is good.
Okay. Okay, cool. But beyond figuring out the budget, our big project for right now is how do we implement whatever programs are going to be funded? And that's a big task, right? I mean, I've been talking with Nolan and with the health department. I've reached out to Kentucky, and I'm meeting next week with the director of the department there, since they came up with this program, providing or funding providers, kids childcare. I'm meeting with a woman from New Mexico, which is a leader in childcare programs. I'm meeting with the state because if we do the provider childcare program, we have to collaborate with the state, who also already does state childcare assistance. There's a lot of the pieces of that program that would already be there that we need to just work with them to make it smooth. We probably can't have the health department administer all these programs. That's a big thing to dump on them. And so we are looking at putting out an RFP to the community, to nonprofits that might be able to administer one or more programs. So there's just a lot going on with respect to implementation. And I've been folding in, well, Nolan and I have been working on it and folding in Branwyn and Jessica and Trevor, since they already had all of the background knowledge of the IT. But we want to involve you guys in those conversations too. Of course, not every meeting, but keep you in the loop on what's going on. So I think that's going to be a big chunk of what we do in November and December, is just try to get ready to get the funding out. And then you'll be wanting to think about hiring an executive director. As I said, my contract goes through the end of December. I don't think you'll be able to come up with a job description or have me help you with this, and fly it and work with HR and get someone, and then they have to give notice if they have another job, and then they come on. You're probably talking February, I would say. I said that yesterday. Trevor said, well, hopefully, but that's even optimistic. So we're going to have to figure out who supports all of this work in that interim. But my plan is to work through this implementation stuff that's sort of real time sensitive, like getting an RFP out, working with the health department, and then turning to helping you, supporting you in the search for an executive director. And Nolan's going to be talking with HR about that process as well. And then I think once you get an executive director on board, early next year, you'll want to start talking about strategic planning beyond 2025 and how do you move beyond the budget you have for 2025 into thinking about longer term funding and what you want to do. So anything anybody wants to add about those? We'll have a time at the end of the meeting to talk about future meetings and set some up. And so these are the things I think we should be thinking about when we're talking about meeting again and what's next on your plate.
Did the implementation team, this is Khalil, have recommendations kind of more in detail beyond the executive director about hiring, I guess, what would be muni staff, or was the focus more on like an outside organization through the RFP process, or was that something that maybe is to be determined? I was just curious if there was discussion about that administration aspect.
Yeah, I think for right now to start these programs, since there is no staff other than me as a contractor to you guys, going the RFP route makes sense to administer the programs. We didn't talk about that specifically with the IT, but the IT did have a lot of conversation about kind of long-term, are there additional staff? Who makes, initially it was like, who even determines who gets a financial assistance? Is it at the health department? Is it the board? But it felt like too much for the board to do all of that. So I think, other IT members might want to jump in, but I think it's a bit of a fluid process. You have in the code an option to hire an executive director. I think you probably want to take that to help you support you through this work and collaborate with AHD and with any third party who's maybe administering the financial assistance.
Well, and to add, budget-wise, it wasn't really talked. We made sure in the ordinance 10% goes to administration, up to, doesn't mean you have to spend it all. Year one, we didn't. So kind of the vision was get your leadership in place. So one, that was the board, and then the board gets the executive director, and through the strategic planning, and as we go through this, figure out what's the additional. And we do know that the Department of Health, no different than any of our departments and our state or other industries, they're short-staffed. And as Nolan said, getting some of this stuff out the door because of the short staff and all those things, we're like, okay, we don't want to cause more impact to the department. So that's why Austin and Nolan connect with the department. Like, what can you and what would you like? And the goal is to build infrastructure. Well, the muni has to come to the conclusion of, which is beyond us, internally, because we have the alcohol tax money that goes out, we have this, it could be future. Do they become a grant making and do that? Or do they rely on, through an RFP process, relationships of folks that do that? Like the Children's Trust has partnered with them, community foundations, Thread, and they get the dollars and they maintain. So does the government want the infrastructure or use the infrastructure that's out? Pros and cons to each. And sometimes it really comes down to who's in leadership, pros and cons. But the muni is going to decide that, because some of those dollars, if they want that in-house, can also be creating an online grant portal versus having to turn in 7 copies and a thumb drive and all those other requirements. So there's a lot to be figured out, couldn't be figured out. So it's like, how do we get the dollars out? Because there's a crisis. Absolutely. So that's why the RFP was looked at as create the space that we can have the real conversations as well. And
yeah, if I can add one thing to that, I think that from the mayor's office perspective, we're very warmly disposed to working with third-party entities to make awards. I think that's something we're really something we think is a really good idea. So that's something we're looking at really closely. And also, Trevor, your earlier comment about some of the budget listing, like specific grants to specific organizations, a lot of those are programs that have been stood up in the past, or the municipality has made direct grants to organizations in the past, and we're not cutting those off at this point. We are looking going forward about how we do things. We don't necessarily want to be, except in very special cases, we don't necessarily want to be having our budget itemize specific grants to organizations at that level. What we do want to do is more kind of consistent process oriented type of work. And so there will be changes in how we do that from this budget, going forward, I think. But we didn't want to cut off, valuable programs abruptly either. that was, so I will tell you a little bit about
I
that.
appreciate that.
But yeah, we don't want a bunch of organizations individually knocking on the mayor's door to get grants. That's not something not a process we're looking at.
You don't want me at the door, huh?
Well, you're welcome, Trevor.
Oh, thank you. I was going to bring all my friends.
There other questions or thoughts?
I would just chime in, thinking about the discussion before about equity. The 7 copies and a thumb drive seems like an administrative nightmare for small programs. And I would hope we focus on keeping things simple and accessible for the people who actually do the carrying.
Yeah, we're thinking 6 copies. And
Progress.
I really appreciate our administration. They're all looking at this, like, we're right now administering 1.75 of the alcohol tax to help get it out the door. And just like the insurance, like there are some barriers that exist, and it's like, well, how do we work with community risk and find those balance? Like I get bigger sums of money from family foundations, and I literally just sign a paper and say thank you, and I get it without. But the lawyers are involved, so there's a lot, and I know. And on top of that, they're dealing with homeless, the police. They have a lot going on, and we're just one small piece. That's also part of a bigger cog of a bigger cog. So respecting all of those things, and we'll always try to work it. They smile when I come in and I talk and I share all those things from our standpoint of the Children's Trust. But the exciting thing is with this administration, know that we are being heard and there is the desire, but it's also finding balance because they need to go home to their kids too.
Mm-hmm.
So. All right, what's our next thing, Austin?
Okay. I think that's it. And so I'll stop sharing my screen. And now just give me a moment. I think now we'll take a little break. I don't know, is food arriving, Marie? I don't want to take too long of a break because we have a lot to talk about, but wanted people to be able to run to the restroom or grab food if it's here.
Yeah, food is here. I'll bring it out and we just eat and talk.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
Okay,
All right.
5 minutes, see y'all back.
Oh, sure, yes.
At 11:46.
We will.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
You guys see them? Okay, so I've already talked to them. They're looking at that supposed to be, but I'm assuming ACCEE is reaching out also.
I've been in. Yeah.
Look at you.
Acclimating.
Yeah. It's called White Sand Beach. Yeah, I've been there.
But I've been communicating with.
Okay, good to know.
I'm supposed to be. Oh, it's new?
I didn't think about that. I was like, come on, and I was like, I'm like, wait a minute, they didn't know, so. I've been told they're one.
I'm sorry.
So definitely the superintendent reach out. So I figured you knew, but I wanted to make
I
sure.
don't like an email yesterday. Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I think this thing. You know how to run the last. Is this your confirmation? Open your email. Your email. You guys all see.
They're young, figuring it out. And they realize or you as their learning stumbles. So, and that's what I'm looking at, and they're supposed to feed back up, so we'll watch it together.
Yeah, thank you.
I made sure that was in there originally. I was like, that's not coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of you.
Like somebody on the floor is like, but they're all, this little, you don't give it to the body.
Yeah.
Creates the breath.
Yeah. Body and then.
They just have the size.
Mine doesn't like it, they can check.
Yeah, Barbara's preferred, like, practice.
It's sort of what Chris does, sort of when they say it. And that's where
Somebody will often times, but yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to choose.
thank you.
I just ordered a variety and hopefully there's something for everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, and in terms of your training.
And then eventually.
You have an session.
It's a
now.
At the end of this, yeah.
Oh, good.
Admiring it.
I was pretty excited on that.
Yeah.
And, oh, yeah, and then,
Yeah.
Something a little bit different to teach.
With that.
Something a little bit different to teach.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Then you just have dogs sitting at your feet too.
Yeah.
they ended.
Not yet, just lots and lots of.
PowerPoint.
Oh, there comes mine.
I started to ask when we're gonna get a dog.
Oh my God, you know.
And then also serve for else.
Adopt a friend's dog for a weekend every month.
Our neighbors are really good about just letting their dog roam the neighborhood.
Oh,
So-
what a nice thing for them to do.
And so we just kind of point the kids back. You know that.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
Well, I had two dogs
Oh,
for a while and one passed away in December and so we're down to one and love her to death, but man, when you go on vacation and when you have to do, like, and I got to have kids, like, can't imagine life without you, but sometimes it might be easier.
No, yeah.
That's kind of, we watched my in-laws go through that battle of every time they travel, boarding the dog, figuring out somebody to watch the dog. We barely get to take vacations.
Right?
Lobbying and.
We've already got 3 people to bring with us and everything.
I don't know if we'll ever.
Hold up.
We're productive or to.
Again, I got a friend that you can watch their dog for them once in a while.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, yeah, I think we're back.
Just the usual, or, sorry.
Trying to climb on the rocks, like getting scared. And you're like,
higher than.
things.
I'm assuming we just picked which one we like.
Just pick
Which one? Yeah.
What is it?
Terms like trying to diagnose.
So how's Katie and the kids doing?
Good. Good. Getting ready for Halloween, guys.
Yeah, we are too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they do it pretty big.
Nice to have some of this.
It's pretty big. For hood, so
Yeah,
we don't have to go far.
we're kind of the same, just the massive street park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you guys get the block party thing going and turning it.
Do you think it's gonna be busy without?
But it's not very critical.
It's critical.
Yeah, because I don't want any of that chocolate left in my house.
Yeah.
I bought full size chocolate bars.
Half and half.
What neighborhood are you?
It's possible.
88th and Elmore.
Okay.
We don't get that many kids. So I can spend $40 on little chocolates, or I just go to Costco and buy the box. 30 of them was like $25. I'm like, okay.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah,
Now you guys know where to go.
yeah, exactly.
We're in Turnigan,
Is
so.
Marie back?
Everybody goes to
Marie's not back yet.
Yep.
Okay. Jamie, are you there? I'm sure Marie will be back momentarily, but I also think it's fine if you got started on your presentations if you wanted to. Up to you guys. I mean, I'm sure she'll be back in a minute, but.
There are handouts over here, which,
Too many fruit
can
chocolate.
everybody grab one? I'll bring it over.
I have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first chunk of the meeting, all of the stuff we just talked about was obviously more ACE Fund related, and this particular board, there's a bunch of stuff that we want you all to know about and hear from the Muni about that is more general board and commission info. And so Marie's going to do that from the mayor's office, just general stuff you need to know about being on a board or commission. You'll need to sign the ethics or the disclosure of economic interest form. And then Jamie's going to give you a bunch of content around sort of meetings in general, Robert's rules, what is the Meetings Act, Open Meetings Act, and yeah, things like that. And then Quincy will talk to you a little bit about just conflicts of interest and if you find one, how you manage it, et cetera. So I guess if Marie's not quite back, I would say, Jamie, go ahead.
Okay, her computer is asleep, so my
Oh.
presentation isn't up, but
She's ready.
she's on the other side of the door.
We can wait then. Oh, there she is.
Hey, Madam
I
Mayor.
grabbed her.
Hey there.
Yeah, just to say hi, first meeting, sorry, Austin, I don't know where we were, but she was just in the kitchen, she was like.
Hi.
Hi, Austin.
Hey, nice to see you. Little,
Good to
little
see you
tiny person
too.
in the distance.
This is me.
Yes. Yeah, well, thanks to all of you for your work here and being willing to serve on this board. And I'm really excited about this group and what you're all going to do. And thank you so much.
You know, and some of you probably know, but do we want to just go quick short names?
Sure.
I'm Jessie Nussett. I'm the Director of Early Learning for the Anchorage School District.
Municipal clerk.
You know me.
Kevin Barry, professor at UAA and Thread Vice President of the board.
Hi, Madam Mayor.
Hi again, Khalil with the laborers.
Yeah. And he's online.
Yeah, Branwen, you want to go ahead?
I'm Branwen Collier, licensed childcare provider.
Anybody can go. Jessica? Oh, if it's helpful, I can.
I'm Jessica Simonson. I am parent of 6 kids and have a dabbling of experience all over the place.
Great.
And Mayor LaFrance, Jessica, Branwen, and Trevor were all on the implementation team. So they bring that experience as well.
Excellent. Thanks for your hard work with that.
Georgina, are you back yet? Or Reverend Parker? Looks like they're making their way back from our break.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I just have to say too, as a co-sponsor of this with Cameron Perez-Verdia, and they got to work with Trevor on this project, it's just so exciting to see it come to fruition in this way. And so thank you for all the time you've put in, you're putting in, and are gonna put in.
Yes, well, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks to see you, Austin, again, and
See you later.
bye.
Cool. Sorry about that. I thought I'll add that to the history of the board that we snagged her and then met the board. Sorry.
That's right. Cool. Do you want to pull up the Robert's Rules presentation or on a thumb drive if you?
Okay.
And Marie, since Marie's back, I mean, if you wanted to go first, I think Marie just has a few
Oh, yeah,
things
you were gonna
to
go
say.
first.
So however you guys want to do it.
Okay. Okie dokie. Well, yeah, mine is very short on board rules and, you know, for the lawyers in the room, everything is in code. Everything you'll do and what governs, everything's in code. But I started here because you can find it on the muni.org website, the code online, and so Title IV. I won't, Title IV, oops, it's just on the left and the almost the bottom on the left. Yeah, I'll just click that. All right, there we go. And so just, I will, just so you know where it's at, but the important things are, of course, the creation was based on the ordinance, as like we said, worked on by Austin and Trevor. And so it started with that creation of the ordinance, and also the members were nominated by the mayor, and approved by the assembly. Qualifications of members. Yours has a different requirement, so something that we need to take in mind by code, you have to be a voter, live in the municipality, so if you ever move, you won't be eligible. And then, did I pass the qualifications yet, or am I just ahead of myself? 035, I think, qualifications. So for your board, you have your own code, 2024-61S1. So for this, at least one and no more than 4 shall be actively employed in the early education or childcare sector. Second one is at least 1 member shall be employed in or retired from a social services profession, including behavioral health. And the last is at least 2 members shall be a parent or legal guardian, utilizing a program that provides early education or childcare to a member of their household. So those are the qualifications of something we need to keep in mind when reappointing members. So in terms of reappointing, you all have 3 terms, 3-year terms. You could be reappointed. It starts, your term stagger. So it will also be on the website depending on what your, when your term expires. So some will be in 3 years, some 2 years, some just 1 year, to follow code that they have to stagger so we don't lose all of you all at once. So that's the terms. And compensation, we can buy you lunch, but that's all you get. At no time should the member be compensated, so sorry. Attendance, that is something that, oh yeah.
Can I add to that, Marie, that we did want to make sure that board costs are covered. So, if we decide to do who knows, like a public fair and you want to talk, anything you want to do, there is the ACE fund to support that. And we have 10% that you can use on administration, which is about $500,000 a year. That would include the executive director, et cetera. But there is, unlike other boards and commissions, there is a fund associated with your board and commission. And that's why we bought you lunch today, because it's over the lunch hour and you should have lunch and you're volunteering. So just keep in mind that, if there are things that the board needs, we will make sure that the board has those things.
Yes, which is good, that not some boards like sister cities, they do a lot of fundraising to do their programs. So yeah, that's very different. So attendance, what I'd like to point out here is you are in a 12-month period, you are allowed to be, what would disqualify you is if you're absent from 3 regular meetings without excuse. So you just have to call at this point, I'm sure, just let Austin know if you won't be able to attend. So that it's marked excused absence, but I'm sure for most of your meetings, it will be hybrid, so online and physical attendance. And thank goodness to the pandemic, the code was changed to allow for online participation. And then what else we have? Physical attendance, removal, and that would address conflicts that Quincy and Jessica will talk about later. So breach of public trust is what would be the number one. That would be a cause for removal. And officers, which we would also do later, a board or commission shall annually elect a chair and a vice chair. So, and then quorum. Your quorum is majority of the seats assigned to a board or commission, and yours is 9. So your quorum, whether filled or vacant, is always going to be 5. And what the code says about meetings, you shall hold regular meetings, but if there's no business, you don't have to. It's up to you to decide. So I'm sure, like Austin said, you'll all decide what's appropriate at this time for your board. Code allows for executive sessions and conflict of interest, again, that will be addressed later by Quincy and Jessica. Also, reports, minutes, and public hearing records. Your minutes, you're supposed to keep minutes, and it's supposed to be available to the public upon request. Recordings are not considered minutes. We still need to have minutes, right? Did I make that up? You made that up. Recording, it's good as minutes? Really? Oh, that's good. Okay, good news. Yes, so you have minutes. Yes, and good, yes, especially if they're posted on your
Can I
online
ask-
YouTube. Yes.
Marie, can I ask you a question? So
Sure.
I actually I failed to put the agenda on the ACE Fund website because I was making some edits to it until yesterday. But what we did with the implementation team is we would put the agendas and then I would put notes. But I could just put the agendas there. Or do you put them up on the Muni website as well? Wherever you put the recording?
No, that's a different website. So we
Okay.
could, yeah, we can talk about that. And termination of the board, I'm pretty sure since you are in code that most of the boards are,
They expire like
audit.
every 3
Yes,
years.
subject to audits. That's every 3 years. There are some that's not applied to, and I'm sure yours doesn't. So, because you all are different. But that's all I have for boards and commission. Like I said, if you have a question about your role, it's in code. So, thank you.
Great. And you can reach out to Marie about those kind of issues, or feel free to always, ask me and I can, figure out who the right person is or however you want to do it. We're all here to support you guys.
What are we doing first?
Okay, so I think Jamie's going to go next and talk through Robert's Rules and the Open Meetings Act, which is something that the legislature created and then promptly exempted themselves from.
And let's see, here we go.
Oh, are we going to have an appearance of one of Jessica's kids?
Nope. No.
Almost.
Okay.
Okay, can you scroll up to?
Oh, sure.
Oh, sorry, I got it.
I didn't bring.
I can try it.
Not yet.
Okay, so I did bring many forms. I know that Austin emailed them to you. There's also over there in the stack, there's conflict of interest, disclosure of conflict of interest forms, disclosure of economic effect forms that need to be filled out and signed. I can take them with me at the end. And then those are given by my staff to the Board of Ethics at the next ethics meeting. So I just want to throw that out there real quick. So Robert's Rules. I'm just going to try to fly through this a little bit, but feel free to stop me if you have questions. We're going to cover the basics of Robert's Rules, what a quorum means, what an agenda is, motions and then processing motions, and then voting. Parliamentary procedures is an organized system that allows a group of people to come together and make a deliberative decision. Basic principles and rules that determine how the group will proceed through the decision-making process is why Robert's Rules was created. And in my research yesterday, Robert just envisioned a deliberative process that you could go from community to community and understand what was going on. Although I don't know that anybody ever really understands what's going on except for the parliamentarian.
Very true.
The basic principles of Robert's Rules is that it's one thing at a time. Only one main motion is allowed on the floor at a time. There are systems of other motions to set things aside or bring things up if something more urgent comes up. It also means that only one person can speak at a time. It means that you can only deliberate one time per meeting. The same motion or practically the same motion cannot be made more than once per session. Enough of us have to be present to decide. The group determines the minimum number of people, which is the quorum. We just talked about that being 5 that must be present to make a decision for the whole group. Your rights are protected even if you're absent. There's an obscure rule that if a majority is absent and it's just to reconsider and put it and record it in the minutes. So then you have to take it up at the next meeting. There vote requirements are based on members' rights. And so when we talk about what's a majority, what's a supermajority, what's 2/3, that's all based on rights. So if you're taking away a member's rights, if you call the question and demand that we vote on it right now, that's taking away the rights of somebody to debate. And so that's requires a 2/3 majority instead of just a majority. Silence equals consent in Robert's rules. So if you're sitting there being very quiet, everybody is assuming that you are in agreement with the group. And then everybody's equal. All voting members have equal rights. The majority rules, but the minority has a right to be heard and attempt to change the minds of the majority.
Jamie?
Yeah.
I realized that I kind of neglected to give a good overview, which is this meeting so far has been pretty casual. I think at some point you guys might be voting on things, you might need to make determinations between different programs, or, if you're hiring someone, have a conversation about that, go into executive session. So a lot of this is for how future meetings will go. And I think once we elect a chair and vice chair, you'll call the meeting to order and all of those things. So this is to give you the tools to run the meetings that way when we're up and running. It's probably obvious, but just so you know.
Okay. So why do we use Robert's rules? Out of all organizations that use parliamentary procedure, about 95% of them choose Robert's rules of order. And the MOA uses Robert's rules of order. It's in the code that we use that particular one. I think the only municipality in Alaska that uses something else is the Kenai Peninsula Borough. A quorum must be present to transact business. A quorum requirement is established by the code, and we already talked about that. Majority of the authorized seat, and so that's 5. The agenda sets out the order in which specific items are to be considered. It's to be approved by a majority vote soon after the start of the meeting. And then once it's approved, it's owned by the body. And so one person can't just decide to take something up out of order. You can change the order of the day, or the chair could ask if there's any objection to moving something around if needed. If there was somebody to give a presentation and they were short on time, you could ask if there's any objection to move something to be taken up first, to get around sticking with the agenda, but the agenda is typically the order that you're going to move in. This is just a sample standard order of business. You call the meeting to order and have the Pledge of Allegiance. The other thing I should say is that agendas are set up in order of precedence. The next thing you do is take a roll call. You want to make sure that you have enough people present to transact business. The next thing is approval of the minutes. Your minutes are the official record of the body, and so they should be approved as soon as practicable. The next item is going to be on. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So in general, is there someone, so are there minutes? If there's someone taking minutes, who is that?
So the code says that there is to be staff to the boards.
Okay.
And it's typically a department that's related to the board. And so like the clerk's office takes minutes of the Board of Ethics and the Election Commission. And then, so it would either be your executive director or somebody from the mayor's office who's staffing the board.
And or the contractor.
I feel like you're calling this a meeting, but it feels a lot more like a work session. I mean, I guess it is a meeting because we're eventually going to elect a chair and a vice chair, but I think a recording in this case is going to be sufficient.
Yeah, I'm just wondering moving forward, and maybe Marie and I just need to chat about that and figure out who's going to do it and how detailed they need to be.
They don't need to be detailed at all. I highly recommend action minutes, which means you literally just record the motion and who moved, who seconded, and how the outcome of the vote. If you start trying to make people add summary to the minutes, you're gonna get into bias and that person's opinion a little bit, and that's not great. And then also, Yeah, so that's why the assembly does action minutes, so they can be very easy.
Great.
So unfinished business is next. And so unfinished business has been postponed to this meeting from a previous meeting where it was automatically continued because you ran out of time. And so that takes higher precedence than the new business. New business is next. And then Open Meetings Act require that we have audience participation. And then we allow for member comments if there's time, and then adjournment. Defining a motion. A motion is the formal proposal for consideration and action. Only one subject can be considered at a time. And then no main motion can be made while another motion is before the body. To make a motion, the mover says, I move that. And so we approve a resolution. It needs to be seconded. And then after it's seconded, it's restated by the chair. And so then the chair says, so-and-so moved and so-and-so seconded to approve this resolution. Once it's restated by the chair, it's owned by the body and it can be debated and then voted on. And so this sort of breaks it down even further. In order to get yourself recognized to make a motion, you raise your hand, you say, Madam Speaker. There's a lot of different ways. Sometimes when you're using microphones, the chair is keyed into the red lights that are on your microphones. Sometimes, like at the assembly, they have a cue that they can just tap that they want to speak so that the chair can see who wants to speak. But I think for more informal, these types of situations, just raising your hand. The chair recognizes the member by nodding or calling on you, and then you state your motion. The second person, person who's going to second can just call out second, and then the chair is going to restate the motion again. Then the chair will ask if there's any discussion. Technically, it's supposed to go pro con in Robert's rules, but it's very difficult for the chair. They don't have a crystal ball to understand which side you're going to be on. At the assembly level, it typically goes back to the person who made the motion. In theory, if they made the motion, they're going to speak in favor of it. And then after that, it's just sort of in who raised their hand first. During debate, subsidiary motions can be made to help the body make their final decision. So another handout that I gave you is the Roberts Rules of Order motions chart. And so it's just a piece of paper. And so item number 10 is at the bottom of the first list at the top. That's the main motion. And everything above it can be made while that motion is on the floor. It would be to modify, a motion to amend would be to modify the wording of a motion. To refer it to a committee would take precedence over a motion to amend. And so that's why I have a ladder on this, is because the way I was taught Robert's rules is you have your main motion, you have your amendment, you have an amendment to an amendment, and then you vote on the amendment to the amendment, and then you go back down and you vote on the amendment, and then you go back down and vote on the main motion. And so you just move up and down the ladder as you move through your meeting. Once it seems like discussion and debate is over and all of you have amended it to perfection, the chair will ask if you're ready for the question. If you're in favor, you would say yes or yay. And okay, so let's just move on. I'll get into the details of voting here in a second. And so then the chair announces the rules of the vote, or the results of the vote. I apologize. So it passed 7-2 and the motion is adopted, or it failed 5-5 and
the resolution is not adopted. The main motion brings new business or the next agenda item before the body. A subsidiary motion changes or affects how the main motion is handled, so it's an amendment, or it is referring it to a different committee or a subcommittee to be researched. It's postponing it to a later date so that more information can be obtained, those types of things. A privileged motion is in the second list on my chart, and that is, I apologize, a privileged motion. If it was really hot in the room, you could do a point of order or a point of information. And so those supersede what's going on in order to be able to take care of the temperature in the room or those types of things that are, if you're online and you can't hear somebody, then you could take care of so that everybody can hear again. So those things are, that's why it's a privileged motion. It's urgent and can be dealt with. Another one is a point of order. If you believe somebody's doing something incorrectly, if that motion isn't in order, you could do a call of order or and ask the chair to rule on whether or not the item is correct. Frequently used motions, obviously you have a main motion on the floor. You can amend by inserting, striking out, or striking out and inserting. It's used to clarify or improve wording of the original motion. It must be germane to that motion. Dividing the question, the assembly uses the word bifurcate. It divides the motion into 2 or more questions, so long that each question can stand alone. The example I often give is, we want to buy Hewlett Packard printer for $600. Okay, so somebody could divide the question and take up the printer first and the dollar amount second. And so then you could change that you want it to be a Epson printer or whatever, and then decide whether or not you want to use $600 or $1,000 or whatever. Postponing to time certain means you're postponing it to a meeting in the future. And then postponing indefinitely is it rejects the main motion without bringing it to a direct vote. It helps you, it's an off ramp politically to make it go away without having to vote to reject something. Now we get into the voting. So the chair will ask the staff to call the roll, and your responses would be yes or yay if you're in favor. It would be no or nay if you're opposed. An alternative to roll call voting is unanimous consent. And so if the chair gets the sense that everyone is on board, the chair can ask, is there any objection to approving this resolution? If no one objects, the chair declares that it's been approved by unanimous consent. If even one member states objection, then the chair would then ask staff to call the roll so that everyone could vote on the item. There are books that provide help. Both of these books listed are written by Nancy Sylvester, and she's come and given trainings to the clerks, AAMC clerks. And then there's also robertsrules.com, rules online. And then I use nancysylvester.com because she trained me. And so that is sort of the quick about Robert's rules. And I did bring scripts for some of the most used motions if you guys are interested in taking that little packet.
And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. There are a lot of motions that I didn't go over that I can, if you want to do something and you have the time, I can give you a script or help walk anybody through what you want to have happen. Reconsiderations sort of are one of the ones that are always fun. You've changed your mind. Something happened during a recess of the meeting or the following morning. You had an aha moment and decided that maybe wasn't the best decision. And so you can move to reconsider and redo the motion. So.
And Jamie, I just want to do a time check. We only have 25 minutes left in the meeting, and we have, I expected that this and Open Meetings Act would take 20 minutes, and it's already been about 20 minutes. So
Okay.
is Open Meetings Act is there a way you could really run through that quickly? I know that there are probably other Robert's Rules things out there, but we can ask you if we have questions, I think. I think it should be fairly simple at this board.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, Robert's Rules is fast. I copied and pasted everything from a presentation that former Assistant Municipal Attorney Todd Sherwood did. And so I'm going to go blast through it, but it's all printed on your handout. And so you can read it because I really want to go over the cautions at the end. So it's just a policy of the state and the municipality that meetings be open to the public and deliberation be conducted openly. It's in statute AS 4462-312. It's also in the municipal code. People's rights remain informed. The Open Meetings Act itself is in 4462-310. All meetings of a governmental body of a public entity. So this board is a governmental body of a public entity, the MOA. The next 2 pages are just copied and pasted from the state law, sort of explaining the rules. The meetings must be publicly noticed. And so we have a website, and then I also have a bulletin board outside that we copy everything from calendars, so that if somebody doesn't have access to the internet, it's public, it's reasonably publicly noticed.
And this meeting was publicly noticed. Marie took care of that.
I think Jamie's office did. Thank you.
Yeah. So at this point, at least 48 hours is adequate public notice. Special meetings can be 24 hours. The only exception would be going into executive session. There is several reasons the assembly can go into executive session from Title IV, which you guys are under. There's 4 reasons. Adversely affect the finances of the city, tend to prejudice the reputation and character of a person, and then matters which by law municipal charter are required to be confidential. You must first convene in a public meeting to go into executive session. If something happens, it's voidable in court. Action must be brought in 180 days. However, you can also cure it by holding the meeting again. The one thing that I blew over too quickly is that state law says that only 3 people can have a conversation right here. More than 3 members or a majority of the members, whichever is less, are present, is considered a meeting. It also doesn't, the state law nor municipal code speak to what a meeting looks like. So emails could be considered serial meetings. When
I think how we handled, I was just going to say how we handled on the assembly, because I think we really need to wrap up, but we're not going to have enough time for other people to present, is no more than 3 of you can discuss something you're going to vote on in private. That's the basic presentation is
Yeah.
just don't do that. Don't have a subset of 4 of you meet to discuss whether you want to vote to support a certain program. That is illegal. So no 3 or fewer is okay.
And
If it's
never
not in
reply
public,
all
once
to
you're in public.
emails.
Yeah,
Never
and don't
reply
do
all
that
to
to
emails.
email too. Yeah. If it's
Um,
about a specific thing that you're going to vote on, if it's scheduling or any of those things, that's fine.
Yep.
But I think,
Um,
Jamie, if people have questions, we could cover them, but we only have 20 minutes left and Quincy hasn't gone yet. We need to pick our future meetings. We need to select a chair and vice chair. We could always do an additional presentation on this if people feel like that would be helpful. Sorry to cut you off.
That's right. I just want to bring you to this page. Stuff that you're going to find online is not accurate at this point.
Oh. Good to know.
Oh,
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Marie, I emailed you the presentation.
Yep, I'll open it.
Sorry.
No worries.
Behind the curve.
thank you, Jamie.
Sorry.
Sorry to make you rush.
Oh, Quincy, there we go.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I was only voluntold I was doing this at 10 o'clock, so.
What's the problem?
And I don't know that much about ethics, but I do know how to read code. And Jamie's here, so,
Yeah.
and Jessica's here. Jessica, come sit with me.
I've got
Okay, can you see
Got
that
a situation?
online?
We can
Municipal-
see Jamie's Open Meetings Act
Oh,
presentation.
no. Okay, I'll have to stop sharing and reshare so you can see the new one. Ta-da! How's that look now?
Looks great.
Ta-da, yay. Okay.
Okay, sorry, one second.
Okay. So I'm Quincy Arms, this is Jessica Willoughby. We both work in the municipal attorney's office. We're here to help with questions. Real quick thing you need to know about ethics. You are bound by the ethics code now that you're members of a board. Congratulations, it's exciting. Oh my goodness, we recognize that as a representative democracy, you're on this board for a reason because you have expertise, right? So we understand that there's going to be things that you know about and that affect your lives. No big deal. That's fine. We don't want to know about those things. We want to know if you have a substantial material conflict that prevents you from being unbiased in your vote. So what I just said, it only affects votes. We'll just leave it at that. Official action is you're voting on things. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so the conflict of interest. A public servant shall not participate in official action if the public servant or a member of your immediate family has a substantial financial or private interest. So how this is going to play out is generally going to be during the meeting, an item comes up, and you're going to be asked to vote on it. And let's say you work for the company that you're considering giving money to, right? So that's an easy one, right? You don't want to vote on that. You have a substantial financial interest in getting that grant money. So there's some that are going to be really obvious, some that are going to be less obvious. And thankfully your role, so these are some factors. I guess this is a little bit out of order. Your role is just to disclose the fact that you have a potential conflict of interest. So before you vote on anything, before you deliberate on anything, you're gonna just raise the issue. And as a board, you're gonna vote on, well, you're not gonna vote for your own interest, but the rest of your board members are gonna vote on whether they think that you have a substantial conflict of interest. And then you're gonna move on from there. So that's practically how it will play out. There are other, well, I could talk about other things about the ethics code, but the conflict is really the most important thing. Jessica was bringing up, like, if you happen to know before the meeting that there's an issue and you have a question, We have ethics officers here, well, mostly one and a backup. And you can avail yourself to Paul or Vasti. Here's his contact info. You have the slides. If you have a question before the meeting and you want to be like, I want to assess this out, I don't know if I have a conflict, you can use him. We also have a board of ethics that does advisory opinions. You can use them. And well, this is just if you have a complaint to make. Any member of the public and any employer, whoever can make ethics boards complaints. I don't know how to go backwards. Do you know how to go backwards? I hit back. Where's that button?
On their keyboard.
Can you scroll
I
down?
don't have a keyboard. Oh, scrolling. Genius, Jamie. Sorry. Can you tell I don't give presentations very often? Other quick points about the ethics code. Gifts. This is kind of obvious. You can't receive gifts because you're now a public servant. Congrats again. Including money, cash equivalent, discounts, meals, entertainment. So like concert tickets, and you can't have someone put your tires on for free, stuff like that. Thank you, go ahead.
Just to be, yeah, if it's related to this, like, oh, I'll change your tires for free if you vote for something, but you can receive a gift from your significant other. That's not.
I was getting there, I promise.
Okay. Significant others pretty invested in childcare.
Yeah. And again, if you have further questions, we're happy to help. You're going to disclose any interest in municipal contracts. I don't need to go over that. Their political activity, you're under this provision. Board members shall not engage in political activity while in the performance of your duty as a board member. So don't come to the board meeting and say, hey, everybody, you should vote for so-and-so. So that's all I got. I think.
And I think the main thing with this, Quincy, tell me, or Jessica, I can't even tell who's there exactly, but if I'm wrong, but I think if you have a conflict, you think you have a conflict, just disclose it. And then we go from there. And once you've disclosed it, you've done your job. And then we sort out with these guys' support and guidance whether you have a conflict. I think the most likely places will come up is someone who owns or works at a facility that might stand to get funding if they take a certain vote, right? And so then there'll be an evaluation of like, oh, is it just your financial interest? Is it broad enough that it isn't impacting just you? And that's probably where this would come into play. And we can invite one of these lovely ladies in to help us through that if we expect a vote like that to happen.
Right. And I think from my perspective, what I generally tell boards and commissions, agencies, anyone making decisions is you're just creating breadcrumbs for someone down the line to look back and figure out how the decision was made, right? So you're in a meeting, it's being recorded. The duty on you is to disclose, and then the chair can kind of guide the conversation through the 6 factors. And it's just kind of step by step. People down the line might disagree, but then they have kind of the basis laid out in the recording or in the minutes to discuss that further. It's just have the conversation. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, the chair is going to rule. Yes, you have a problem in your conflict, and so you can't vote, and so then you're recused. You don't have to vote. Or, no, you don't have a conflict, and so you can vote. If you ever disagree with the ruling of the chair, you can appeal a decision of the chair. And that causes a whole nother vote. But a lot what Christopher does at the assembly level is he just asks if anybody has any objection. He makes his ruling, and does anybody have an objection? And as long as nobody says anything, it sort of locks it in that everybody agreed that his decision was the correct one.
Right. So and the chair has some discretion on how they want to handle conflicts, whether they want to make the decision themselves or whether they want to put it to a vote or. Any question?
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank
No
you,
private
ladies. And
claims.
don't forget to, Jamie and Marie, are you guys going to be in charge of tracking can you tell them exactly what forms they need to sign and return? It sounds like, I thought there was only one, but it sounds like there are 2. And then who who is tracking whether they've turned all those in? Each person has turned them in.
Well, it's my office.
Oh, okay. Great. And there's 2 forms or 1?
Just one.
Just 1. Okay, the one I sent around then. Okay, great. And I think that I connected the people who are online with Jamie by email at the beginning of the meeting, so you guys can coordinate to get it, maybe even DocuSigned. It sounded like that was an option. Okay, thank you, municipal experts. Sorry you guys felt rushed. We're trying to cram a bunch into this meeting and it's already 2 hours and 15 minutes, if you can believe it, long. So, okay, we have, oh, go ahead.
You're good.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
I just said it's all good. Bye, Austin.
Bye, see you later. Thank you so much. Okay, so the last things we have on the agenda for today are selecting a chair and vice chair and planning for future meetings. I think it's easiest to try to figure out what our general plan is for future meetings and maybe even schedule some while we're all together, but we don't have to do that if we can't or run out of time. Is there anyone in the room who is there to provide public comment for audience participation, Marie?
Nope.
Okay, great. Well, we can use the last 11 minutes we have then on selecting a chair and vice chair and planning for future meetings. I think Jamie is going to help us with the chair and vice chair process. I think people can self-nominate, or we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so we'll just open the floor for nominations for the position of chair. Does anybody want to make a nomination for the position of chair?
I'd be happy to be chair.
It's just about the nomination.
Are there
It's
any
always
other,
good when you get a volunteer.
are there any other nominations for chair? Is there any objection to Trevor serving as chair? Trevor is chair. Nominations are open for vice chair. Anybody have a nomination for vice chair? Can I ask a question on this topic? Jessica, do you want to be vice chair again, or?
I can do it. I just wanted to leave it open if somebody else wanted to as well.
I'll nominate Jessica unless someone.
You're going to be stuck with me again, Jessica.
No, you guys can't get enough of this.
That's okay.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Is there any objection to Jessica serving as vice chair? Then Jessica is your vice chair? I didn't need ballots.
Hey, well, that was quick and easy. Thank you, Trevor and Jessica, for volunteering. I didn't know how that would go or if we'd have volunteers. That's great. Perfect. And Trevor, you're going to be taking a sabbatical in December and January, right? Just so Jessica has a heads up that any meetings we have during that time, she'll be serving as chair.
Yes, so this is my official notice of being absent in December and January. I'm out of country and unavailable from the 6th of December through the 2nd of February.
Good for you.
That's fine with me.
Nice.
Great.
Figured after 13 years, I should take a vacation.
Yes.
Yes, you should. And Reverend Parker saying thank you to Trevor and Jessica on the chat. I don't know if you guys can see that. Great. So we have about 8 minutes left. I think we should talk about, with the things coming up on your plate, how we want to handle those, what the right timeline is, and when we want to meet next. And also just generally meetings, like does over the lunch hour work well for you? Do people prefer evening meetings? Like how often do you want to meet? I think we have a lot of freedom in how we do it. But I think we should probably meet at least once in the next, I would say maybe right before Thanksgiving or something, to talk through updates on implementation, what happened with the budget, and start thinking about hiring an executive director and what other support you might need prior to that person being hired. Trevor, Mr. Chair, do you want to?
Am I officially taking over? That was quick. Sure. Let's do this. So one, well, here's a question for the group. I think Austin already set the stage. Is it's always nice for calendars if we have a set timetable. It's always the first X of Tuesday of every month at this time. So, well, and here's a question for the group. Do we feel like we can do it here? or do we want, or do people need like a doodle because do people have their calendars?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start with our parents and providers. I think your schedule is going to be most impacted. I know with me, no kids, and in my role, I'm pretty flexible. So I would love to hear from you all, what is the best schedule? Is it a morning? Is it afternoon? Is it evening? Let's start there.
Mornings
please
work
just speak
best
up.
for me. Yeah, mornings before 12:30 work best for me, ideally.
Okay, other folks? Brianna, no, Brandon, sorry. Brandon, thank you. My apologies.
Yeah, I just like sort of middays are best for me, but I can make it work. We're talking once a month.
Okay, Jessica?
Mornings are usually best.
Okay. For folks,
Mildred?
Reverend Parker?
Please call me Mildred. I'm gonna change that. I need to change that.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you for telling me. I like to call people by the name they so choose. Go
Yes,
for it.
thank you, Trevor. I'm going to say mornings or evenings. Evenings are good too, because sometimes things pop up. So evenings are really good for me.
Okay. Well, and I also heard mornings. So those in the room, the mornings work.
Yes.
Mhm.
They do.
Okay. So now let's figure out the day of the week. You have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. In my experience, people usually don't like Monday and they usually don't like Fridays because of long weekends and so forth. Is anybody wanting a Monday or a Friday? Hearing none. So we got Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, because I'm speaking, if I cannot do Tuesdays, that's helpful because every Tuesday is our staff meeting. So can I just have a show of hands of preference? Does anybody, well, let's do it this way. Does Wednesday not work for anybody if we did morning?
Wednesday does not work for me.
Thank you.
Wednesday is hard for me.
Wednesday.
Wednesdays are hard for me as well.
Okay, but several people. Thursday
Wednesday's
morning.
hard for me too.
Thank you. So we're going with Thursday. Does Thursday work for folks?
Yes.
Hearing yes. Great. All right.
Great.
So we got, sorry?
I just said great. I'm
Oh,
glad this
okay,
is
good.
working out.
Well, we're not all the way there yet. Give me a moment. So we're at Thursday. Now let's talk about time. We said morning. To me, that's from 8 to 12. Again, going back to my parents, and I'm thinking school times, all of that. What is an optimal time to start?
9 a.m. or later, given
Mid-morning.
daycare drop off.
So,
Wow.
so do we want this like, because I'm thinking 2 hours meetings for now, and we'll assess after 6 months. So if we did 10 to 12, does that work for folks?
Yes.
That works.
All right, so we've got Thursdays, 10 to 12. Next question is thinking of a month, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Do people have a preference of it being always the first Thursday, second Thursday, third Thursday, or fourth Thursday of the month? If we do the first Thursday, I would only miss 1 meeting, which might be helpful for Jessica.
Yeah, so Jessica says, oops, I lost.
So does
I
the
also
first,
think, Trevor, that we could say from January forward, because people are less likely to have things booked. So that's what we'll do. And then we could try to figure out, like, for instance, if we want to meet in a few weeks, we don't want to meet at Thanksgiving, right? So we might want to meet the week before. So maybe, anyway, just a suggestion.
right, thank you. Well, and let's set it, and then we probably do need to talk November and December, because we picked the first Thursday, that's next week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's, well, and let's do what Austin just suggested. This is for January on. Does the first Thursday work for folks? Okay, so it's the first Thursday of every month at 10 a.m. to 12. We have that set. Who sends this out?
Great.
and gets this on everybody's account. Who manages this for
I think
boards?
Marie and I can coordinate. I would, except for I'm not a forever part of this. And so I don't
Yeah.
want to set up a calendar thing and then have it disappear or do something weird. So I think Marie is a better person to send it out, but
okay.
she and I can coordinate.
Well, and everybody else will just make a note so we get it on your calendars. So let's talk November and December. So us meeting in 1 week makes no sense. And then December is the holidays. Could I make a recommendation that we actually just maybe do one meeting? It's either the last week of November or the first week of December. We could go with the first, going into our cycle of no meeting in November. I don't know if that works for you, Austin, if there was something specific, because we're going to need some time to get some things in place. So do we think one meeting and make it the first week of December, and we make that meeting focused in on the executive director we work on? I can work with you in getting a draft job description. We can do things via email, so we're prepped for the meeting. How does that sound to folks?
Does that mean one meeting before we potentially lose Austin?
Well, that's another thing I actually want to bring up to this group, but yes. We're not going to lose Austin.
Okay, understood.
I know where to find her,
Great.
but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So does if we just start the 5th of December?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so our next meeting will be December 5th, 10 a.m. to 12. Austin, anything else around the timing and so forth? I think we got that all taken care of.
I think we're good as long as we feel comfortable doing a lot of this implementation, just kind of keep rolling with trying to work with the mayor's office and AHD and potentially get an RFP out. And as long as the board is comfortable with that, and I've been meeting with a smaller group of Jessica, Branwyn, and Trevor, and anybody else could hop in if they're really interested in these details. But if you're all okay with that, we'll just keep going and we'll keep you posted in December based on what the budget and everything checks out to be. Okay.
So one of the things that I would like to suggest, and I'm not sure if we need to do a motion, because and maybe this is part of the minutes process, is I've already talked with Katie, the goes by chief of staff? Mm-hmm. Yes, okay, making sure right title. And then also Nolan of working and exploring how do we extend Austin's contract out. And also it's not also determined, is Austin going to or not? She has to determine that if her schedule and life allows it. But one of the things I would love is to entertain a motion to create either a resolution, or I think there's some great authority that we as a board, we want this support. We want it from this level of knowledge and experience to continue until, in my head, it's like at least up until 1 month after hiring the executive director, because there needs to be transfer of information. And we don't know when that is, that we would like at least a contract until March or April. So it's just done once.
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead and use your language, please.
I'll make a motion that we, if we have the authority, extend Austin's contract, the contractor's contract till 2 months after the hiring of the ED, 1 to 2 months after.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
So we have the motion, if everybody heard it.
Can I make a suggestion that Trevor and I have been talking about this and what are my personal plans and I need to figure out what I'm doing, but I would suggest that you make the motion that it would extend to me, or if I'm unavailable, a similar contractor who could also support you, just so I guess you could do that in December. We'll know by December. I just don't want you guys to, okay, well, no, we'll leave it then.
Okay, second by Kevin. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Passes unanimous. I will, in the next, by Monday, draft an email that goes to Katie and Nolan that outlines this, and I'll ensure to email the
I have a
entire
quick question.
board.
I have a quick
Please?
question.
Yeah,
I saw Mildred put up her hand. Did Mildred put up her hand to say aye?
Yes.
Oh, okay, just checking.
thank you, Jessica. Good catch. All right, and I will make sure that all the board is CC, just so you're aware of the language, and it's incorporated. All right, Austin, any other business?
I think we're good.
Any
Only
other
3
business
minutes
from the
before it's over.
members? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Kevin. A second?
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you,
Jessica?
guys.
Thank you. All in favor to adjournment? Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, hearing none. Thank you all. Great first gathering. I'm looking so forward to working with you all. Thank you. Have a great day and drive safe if you're driving.
Hey, guys. Thanks again.
Bye.
Thanks.